Hello, friends. I'm Rich Carlsen, a Senior Cloud Solutions Architect here at Microsoft, and I welcome you to another episode of the Microsoft Partner Technical Success Channel. At Microsoft, we value our coveted partners and the innovative solutions and services that you bring to market. In this episode, I would like to introduce David Starr. David Starr is a principal software engineer working with partners that sell their applications on the Azure Marketplace. Today, David will introduce Azure Managed Applications for the Azure Marketplace and the opportunities that present themselves to you, the valued Microsoft partner. So on that note, take it away, David.
Thanks, Rich. It's good to be here. I appreciate it. And let's just jump right in, okay, to what managed applications really are. And we can start off by looking at the fact that there are two types. There are managed applications that we use for our company, and they're only available to people who are creating applications within our company. And I think about those as being private managed applications. There's also managed applications, and this is what we'll be talking about today, that we sell through the Azure Marketplace, or I should say that partners sell through the Azure Marketplace. And so we can think of those as being public managed applications. And so that's where we're going to really look today. Some differentiating factors here. As I mentioned, a managed application, a private one, is available only within your organization, and it's made available through something called a service catalog. So if you were to go into the Azure portal, type service catalog, you would see the service, and it would give you the ability to create managed applications for deployment within your own organization. So the bottom line with the internal one, why would I want to use that, is simply because in many cases I want to institutionalize some policy or something like that where I'm controlling how this application gets rolled out. So that's sort of the story on the service catalog or private version. Let's look at the Marketplace, the Azure Marketplace version. So here we are able to sell our applications to the public. That's the whole intent of the Marketplace after all. And we sell those to our customers, talk about those as third parties as opposed to independent software vendors, ISVs, that's you, the partner. And one thing to note is that when customers install your application, they have limited visibility on the resources that are being installed. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But bottom line is we're going to talk Azure Managed Apps. Now, when we deploy them, this is what makes them so powerful. They're deployed via ARM templates, so Azure Resource Manager templates. If you're not familiar with these are simply JSON files that we can use to define almost every service that we would like to deploy into Azure. So instead of using, for example, PowerShell, or instead of using the Azure command line, CLI, we can use ARM templates that are effectively config as code so that we can version these templates and such. And they become very powerful in deploying things in an automated fashion over and over again. So that's really the underpinning of a managed application. The next piece is that I, as a publisher, am going to provide support in an ongoing way to that application. And in order to do so, I have to be able to operate on the resources that are deployed into your subscription. So that's the whole idea. The customer gets the resources deployed into their subscription, and the publisher, among other tools, but primarily can use Azure Lighthouse for maintenance and ongoing monitoring and all that good stuff. Patching VMs is a good example of a bit of maintenance that you might need to do on your customer's installation. All right. Now, I've talked a couple of times about the fact that this lives in your customer's subscription. Let's look at a bigger topology of what that really means. So we can start in the Azure Marketplace, of course, because that's where all of this begins. And in here, I can go and create for my customers an offer. And I will often talk about an offer is, let's say that you're a optical character recognition company for insurance or for medical. These notes come through all the time and you want to scan them, right? So I can come out here and I can buy the silver plan, which gives me N number of scans per month, let's say, just making that up. Gold plan, platinum plan, whichever plan is most appropriate to my needs as a customer. Now, when I purchase that plan, what happens is that we provision resources into my subscription. So we do that in a two-step way. One, we create something called a managed application itself. This is the crux of what we've been talking about. And what is that? It's really nothing more than a service identity that you're going to use to access resources that you deploy into the customer's subscription in this next resource group. We talk about this as a managed resource group, and it's the one into which we deploy all of those resources. It might be VMs, it might be Azure Storage, it could be Cosmos, it could be anything you want to deploy into that managed resource group, and then the customer takes on the cost of infrastructure in an ongoing way. But you're on the hook as the publisher for maintaining it over time. And that resource group, the managed application within it, is what gives you the access to those resources to be able to maintain them. Now, the customer has a little bit different set of permissions here. They have contributor access on the resource group with the managed app in it, and they have read access by default. You can change this, but by default, they have read access on the managed resource group. So what does this mean? It means they can see data, they can see things, they can see the VM. They might, if there's a VM in the managed resource group, they might be able to, because you've opened ports remote into those machines, they can do various things that you allow them to do, but they're not going to be able to delete resources or anything like that, unless they choose to use their contributor access on the resource group with the managed application within it. If they do that, they're able to delete the managed application, and in doing so, then they're effectively unsubscribing from your offer, and it will delete the managed resource group and everything within it. So that's a quick trip through Azure Managed Applications, how we use them on the marketplace, and the resulting architecture that you get when you deploy one of these.
David, this is great. But one question, what is a typical deployment model needed to build a managed marketplace application?
That's perfect. So let's think about each one of these plans here on the left. We got a platinum, a gold, and a silver plan. Turns out each one of those might deploy a different set of resources. And remember that we talked about them being created by an ARM template. That means that we have an ARM template and some other artifacts that we associate to each and every plan. And they might be different because perhaps with a gold plan, I'm going to create a different storage solution, perhaps. Who knows? But what goes into that package that we deploy and we associate with each plan is a set of artifacts starting with an ARM template called main template.json. There's actually a naming convention to these things. And so we have an ARM template. This is what has the responsibility of creating those resources. We also have a file called create UI definition JSON file, of course. And what this does is effectively set up a little wizard or installer for our application. This is what the customer sees. So I, as a publisher, can use create UI definition to customize the install process. And the outputs of that create UI definition feed into the ARM template that then deploys the resources. So I might do things like get your storage name or the name for an endpoint or a function or what have you that I'm going to deploy using the main template, but I'll collect that information using the wizard that runs based on create UI definition. And then finally, the view display. This is getting a little more advanced for some folks, but this actually is what we use to customize the managed application itself. So with this, we're actually able to make changes to that managed application that we saw in that resource group on the previous slide. And we can do interesting things like create custom resource providers. which is really going quite far in beyond an overview, I think. So we can, bottom line is, customize our managed applications using View Display.
David, another question. Why would I choose to use a managed application for my marketplace offer?
That's a great question too. And foremost, let's back up just to the previous slide there and note that we have that customer has read access onto the managed resource group. That's a big deal. What that means is that we can protect our IP. So if I happen to be running an application, maybe it's a desktop application on a VM, and I would like to protect that so that people can't go in and change API keys, install new software, what have you, then this is a good mechanism for deploying your application. Also, change management. I get to control that as the publisher. And often that's a big deal because I don't want to rev a version of my service, a given past service that I might be using from 1 to 2, because I'm not ready. So I don't want my customer to rev it before I'm ready. And I can, as we talked about, have very different deployments based on the different plans. That's really a cool feature of managed applications. And then finally, we mentioned this, but deploying into the customer subscription means that they're incurring the infrastructure costs. So all you have to worry about is licensing.
Thank you, David, very much for the insightful introduction into the Azure Managed Applications for the Azure Marketplace. I thank all the Microsoft partners out there for viewing this informative episode. Look for more informative technical episodes to come on the Microsoft Partner Technical Success channel. Thank you.